Sorry. Sorry. I'm just trying to get through the day with that infernal racket coming from across the highway. If you didn't notice it pulling in, the circus is in town. Set up overnight, right here in the lot across the way. Nobody saw it arrive. I certainly didn't. I locked up. The lot was empty. I opened up this morning, and there it was. Tents, wagons, the whole affair. Come, one and all, feast your eyes and witness the oddest obscurities the universe has to offer. On the hour. Every hour. Trust me, if you can't stand it, rest assured, I can't either. Still, I can't really complain about the business it's brought to the area, if only for a few days. Oddest obscurities, I hear you ask. Well, it's a sort of petting zoo, is how I understand it. A menagerie, if you want to give it a finer word. They claim to show you species seldom encountered on planet Earth. 7-foot moths, oily-skinned demons, 3-eyed giants. They say the tent's bigger on the inside than on the outside. But you hear all sorts, don't you? I wouldn't know myself. I haven't had time to head over. You want to go and see, don't you? Be my guest. I've heard mixed reviews so far, I'll be honest with you. But I'm not going to be the one to stop you. Go on. Go and walk the outer fringes of what the universe of taxonomies has to show you. But do let me check you in first. Welcome to the Dreamland Motel. If you've stayed with us before, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a review down below. Each one helps us be seen, helps us do a little better by the next guest who wanders in off the highway. And to our residential guests, our patrons, thank you. For the extra tips, for the kindness, it doesn't go unnoticed, I assure you. Room 17. Towels are in the hallway. Get the door locked behind you. Settle in. Pour yourself a drink. It's watered down, but it is cold. And it's on the house. And then, sure, go on. Go and see the menagerie. But just keep track of time. I wouldn't want you to accidentally become one of the exhibits. Have you ever heard of a bestiary? Maybe you've just nodded. That's fine. This won't take long. What we're doing tonight, for all the pomp and circumstance, the barker and the banner and the string of lights slung over the lot, is, in a way, a modern version of exactly that. So what is it? A bestiary is a book of beasts. Nothing more complicated than that. They were made mostly in England, mostly between the 12th century and the 13th, and the surviving ones are beautiful objects, heavy vellum pages, letters gilded in gold and silver, an animal painted in the margin of each one, a lion, an elephant, a whale the size of an island, with sailors making camp on its back, mistaking it for land. You'd be forgiven for thinking it was an early encyclopedia or a field guide, the medieval mind trying and mostly failing to do zoology. But it wasn't that. Because a bestiary was never trying to tell you what an animal was, it was trying to tell you what an animal meant. Every beast was a lesson. The lion sweeps away its tracks with its tail, hiding his true identity. It symbolized how Jesus Christ was able to trick the devil and conquer evil. The elephant was said to have no joints in its knees. If it fell, it could not rise. So beware the fall from grace, from which no man climbs back unaided. The creature wasn't the subject. The creature was the sermon, a thing to be read. And here is the part I want you to carry with you, as I hold back the flap and invite you to walk into the dark of this tent. It didn't much matter whether the animal was real. A scholar once put it better than I can, that in a bestiary it was not so important that a beast exist as that its existence carried a meaning. So the pages didn't sort the true from the false. The lion sat beside the unicorn, the elephant beside the manticore, a thing with a man's face and a lion's body, and the sting of a scorpion, that no one had ever seen or ever would. Real or impossible, shoulder to shoulder, in the same gold-lettered hand. No partition between them. No skeptic leaning against the door, checking which ones had tickets. The wonder was the point. The meaning was the point. Those books didn't stay in their libraries either. The beasts climbed out, into the stone of the cathedrals, the borders of the tapestries, the crests on the shields of men who'd never read a word. They became the furniture of the imagination. And their grandchildren are all around you. The Cabinet of Curiosities, the Natural History Museum. The very idea that you might gather the world's strangest things under one roof and file them, and charge a coin at the door to come and take a peek. Yes, this tent has a long bloodline, longer than the highway it's parked on. So that's what tonight is. A bestiary, a book of beasts, read aloud. Except ours have a peculiar quality. Our beasts. The lion came back. Every age has its lions. You can see one tomorrow, behind glass, asleep in the heat. But the creatures in here, each one of them, was seen only a handful of times. Many only once. Truly once. A single night, a single road, a small group of frightened people. And then never again. The archetypes we've spent this whole series cataloguing, the tall, fair ones, the greys, the things with the mantis faces, those are the repeat guests, the ones who come back often enough to earn a shelf, a name, a drawer to be filed in. Tonight's guests are here for one night only. And if the old books were right, if a beast is a thing to be read, a sign set down to mean something, then I'll leave you with the question the whole tent is built around. What is the meaning of a thing that was only ever seen once? What's the moral of a 7-foot moth? Come on. First cage is this way. I've heard this one's a beauty. Careful through here. Mind the dark, the ground's uneven, and we don't like this stretch. Wait, did you see that? There, off past the edge of the staging. A shape, but it's wrong somehow. I couldn't tell you why. It's gone now. It's only the hands that run this place, I expect. You get used to not looking at them directly. Anyway, here we are. Mind the rope. Now you'll notice we keep it dim in here, dimmer than the rest. There's a reason, and it's a simple one. Light makes this one agitated, frantic. The same as any moth, I suppose. Except a moth flies toward the flame, and this one, when the light finds it, wants to be somewhere else, wants out. So we keep the lamps low, for its sake, and I'll be honest with you, for ours. So you won't see it all at once. Nobody ever has. That's rather the whole point of it. Just let your eyes adjust. There, that shape, back against the far bars. Man-shaped, more or less. 6 feet, 7, standing, not crouched. Not the hunch of an animal, but something upright, the way any person holds itself. Slender, strong through the shoulders, powerful, you'd say, if you saw it move. And the ones who saw it move never quite got over how. The wings are folded now, drawn down over the back like a cloak pulled shut. You'd almost miss them. Spread, they'd run 10 feet tip to tip. But it won't spread them in here. Couldn't if it wanted to. The colour's hard to say in this light. Dark, a dull grey. But does describing the colour of a thing even make sense if that thing has only ever known darkness? And the head? Well, that's just it. Look for the head. The people who met it said the same thing over and over, and it troubled them more than the rest of it put together. I couldn't see its head, one of them said. Didn't know if its eyes were set in a head at all, as though the thing were all body and all wing and eyes. Wait, let me shine a light on them. There, you see them now? 2 of them. Red, round, near enough 2 inches across, 6 inches apart, and burning. Except that's the wrong word, because they don't burn on their own. Watch. Take the light away, and they're gone. Nothing there, just dark. One of the witnesses said it better than any scientist has managed since. No glowing about it, until the lights hit it. It doesn't shine. It answers. You give it light, and it hands you back those 2 red discs, exactly the colour of a warning you didn't know you were being given. That's enough of that. Down goes the lamp. He doesn't care for it, and I did warn you. They found it, or it found them on the 15th of November 1966. In fact, this very travelling menagerie was founded in the same week. Near midnight, 2 young couples out on the road that runs through the old TNT grounds north of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where they'd made the munitions in the war, then left the bunkers to the weeds. Roger and Linda Scarberry, Steve and Mary Mallet. Real names, real people. You could have found them in the phone book the next morning. It was standing by the road, 2 red eyes in the headlights, and then it went up, straight up. No run, no leap, like a helicopter, they said. And it came after them. Back down the road toward town, at speeds they swore touched 100 miles an hour, holding pace with a moving car, in the dark, without ever seeming to beat its wings. They drove to the courthouse and told a deputy, and the next morning the local paper ran it across the front page, under a headline that couldn't quite make up its mind. Couples see man-sized bird, creature, something. Something. That was the best the paper could do. I've always been fond of its honesty. It's the most honest word anyone's printed about the whole affair. The name came later, and unfortunately, it came cheap. Some copy editor, stitching the story together, must have had television on the brain, because that winter half the country was watching a man in a cape and a cow, and the word was already in the air. Batman. So, Mothman. A tired joke that has outlived everyone who was in on it. And then it didn't stop. That's the part that gets forgotten. One night and one road makes a good story, but this wasn't that. For 13 months the reports came, 24 and more, up and down the county. A man allegedly saw it in broad daylight, lifting off a field beside the highway, like a helicopter. The same phrase, unprompted, a stranger who'd never spoken to the others. People drove out at night in convoys with rifles to hunt it. A whole town with its head tipped back. Now, there is another side to this. A biologist from the local university said that a sandhill crane stands near as tall as a man, with a wingspan pushing 8 feet and a patch of red skin round the eye, and that a lost one, blown off its migration, would look like the end of the world to a car full of frightened kids on a dark road. He might be right. Others said heron, others said owl. And in fact there was an owl, a snowy one, shot near the town that December, 5 feet across, printed in the papers as a giant bird. It's stuffed and mounted in the Mothman Museum to this day, which is either a confession or a joke, and I've never settled on which. Owl eyes flare red in a headlight. The mind supplies a body, and fear might do the rest. And the timing troubles it further. The sightings multiplied after the paper ran the story. Once the town was handed something to look for, the town obliged and found it. That's how these things tend to go, I'll admit. Except here it is in front of us now. It won't quite go away. The first of the townspeople saw it before there was any story to catch, before the word, before the shape got passed around the county. They had nothing to copy, and they came back saying the same impossible thing anyway. Make of it what you will. Couples see man-sized bird, creature, something. And there is that something more. The part that turned a monster into a prophet. On the 15th of December 1967, 13 months near to the day after those two couples first saw it, the silver bridge over the Ohio River, loaded down with Christmas traffic, came down, all at once. 46 people went into the cold water and did not come out. And the sightings that had troubled that town for over a year suddenly stopped, as though whatever it was had run out of reasons to be there. I'm sure you can feel how the story tells itself from there. That it was never a monster at all, that it was a warning, that it had stood by that road for 13 months trying to tell a town something the town had no way to hear. And if we're honest with ourselves, nobody said a word of that until afterward. The prophecy was written into it later, once the water had grown still over those 46, by authors, and in the end by a film. A meaning fitted to a mystery, after the mystery found a grief that it could attach itself to. Which is precisely what we stood and talked about back at the mouth of the tent. The oldest habit we have. A beast is seen, and then, when we need it to, the beast is made to mean. But it's easy, it's lazy, to say the meaning came afterward and therefore the meaning is nothing. That only holds if you're sure of one thing, that time runs the way it feels like it runs. This, then this, then this. One bead after another on the string. Cause always arriving politely before effect. And I don't know that. Neither do you. And that's one of the strangest corners of this whole business. The dread that comes before the disaster. The dream that lands the night before. The warning no one can place until it's too late to use. That corner has never once respected the straight line of time. From where we stand, it looks like hindsight, yes, a thing seen and later dressed in a purpose, but from where we stand is carrying an awful lot in that sentence. We're the ones strung out along the line, a moment at a time, watching cause come before effect because it's the only way we're built to watch. A thing that stood in the dark for 13 months and would not come into the light. I can't tell you it stood where we stand. I can't tell you its before and its after are the same as ours. So I won't tell you it was a warning, and I won't tell you it wasn't. I'll tell you only this. A town looked up for a year. Then the bridge came down, and the looking stopped. And one of those young women from that town, when asked what it was she'd seen, gave the truest answer anyone gave in the whole affair. Believe me, if you ever saw it, you'd be a believer. You might be wondering now where the rest of the story went, because there is more. A great deal more. Indrid cold, the grinning man, the men in the dark suits, the telephones that wouldn't stop, the dreams that came before the water. If you know the Mothman at all, there's a fair chance you know it through those. And that whole country belongs to one man, an author named John Keel. I want to be careful how I say this because it would be easy to be glib, and he has not earned glib. Keel was an extraordinary mind, and whatever found him out there, something found him out there. He came back changed by it, and he wrote it down, and the writing has haunted everyone who's read it since. But his is a room of his own, a long stay and a strange one, and we'll book it another night, because it deserves the whole night, not a cot in the corner of somebody else's. Tonight, we kept to the original, the road, the 2 couples, the 13 months and the bridge, the thing itself, before the story grew a second head. Not because the rest is worthless, but because this one never needed the embellishment. It was already enough. That being said, there is one idea of Keel's I won't leave at the door, one that's been gaining ground lately, and for good reason. Keel spent years chasing these things, and somewhere in the chase he stopped believing they came from other planets. That struck him in the end as too tidy, too comfortable. A ship, a crew, a long crossing through ordinary space. That's only us, really, but with better engines. What he came to suspect was stranger, that they were never visitors, that they had always been here, beside us, around us, in a band of reality our senses simply aren't built to catch. He called that hidden band the superspectrum, and the things that step out of it he called ultra-terrestrials, from a part of what is real that we cannot see, and were never equipped to see, something more truly other than alien has ever managed to mean. And the reason the idea keeps gaining ground is that it accounts for the one thing the nuts and bolts version never could. Why the phenomenon shifts, why it wears the costume of the age that happens to be looking. Angels for 1 century, airships for another, grey men for ours. Why it so often seems to hand each witness back the very image they walked in carrying, as though it hasn't got a body of its own at all, as though it borrows from us. For that perspective, not necessarily the legend, Keel has earned his place at this first exhibit. But to walk any further down that road tonight would be irresponsible of me. So I won't. The thing in the corner of this cage, patient, half-lit, watching us at least as closely as we're watching it, may not really be a creature at all. It may be a silhouette, a shape we've drawn around something we haven't the equipment to look at directly. A placeholder, standing in for a possibility we are not yet ready to confront, which is this, that fate and the phenomenon might not be 2 separate things, that the thing on the road and the falling of the bridge might somehow be of a single piece. And if that were so, if they are bound up together, the sightings and the catastrophe, the watching and the cold water, then I have to put to you the question that I can't answer. Are these things, in a way, responsible? For the bad and for the good? Do they stand outside our little line of time and look down the whole length of it, at once, in complete and terrible assurance of how it all ends? Did the thing by that road already know about the bridge, the way you know the last page of a book you've read before? And if it knew, what do we call a watcher that sees a disaster coming for 13 long months, and does not, cannot, will not stop it? We have a word for a being like that. It's a very old word. And it isn't alien. Or maybe to be watched by something that already knows the ending is not only a horror. Maybe there's an uneasy comfort folded up inside it, that the falling of the bridge was seen, that it was not random, not unwitnessed, not alone, that something stood out by that road in the cold for over a year, red-eyed and patient and unwilling to look away. A strange, uneasy comfort. That's the most I can hand you at this particular cage. Come on, let him settle. There are others. Through here, mind the flap. The canvas hangs heavier on this one. They like to keep this tent shut. You'll feel the difference in the air. The Moths was a morning sort of place. This one's louder, even when it's quiet, even when they're sleeping the way they are right now. Because the two we keep in here share something the Mothman never had. The moth appeared on a lonely road to strangers passing through. These two came to people's homes. They came and they stayed, and they would not leave. A house and a hilltop, surrounded in the dark. That's why they share a night, these invaders. Here's the first. Look low, you won't find him at eye level. There, buried in the straw. Little, 3 feet, maybe 3.5, small in the body, but the arms run long, too long, down past where a normal child's would stop, and they end in hands that are mostly finger, and the fingers end in something nearer a talon than a nail. The head is far too big for the body, round, almost perfectly round, and set into it 2 eyes, wide and yellow, that gather up what little light there is and hand it back to you. Great pointed ears like a bat that learned to stand up. And the skin, well, skin may be the wrong word. It has the look of metal, silver, hammered and dull, the way an old spoon looks, and when the light finds it, the whole small body seems to shine with a tired glow. There were a dozen of them near enough, the night this began. The 21st of August, 1955. A farmhouse outside a place called Kelly in Christian County, Kentucky. A small house, and full that night. 11 people under one roof, and not a single telephone among them. It started the way these nights do. One man went out to the well for water, and came back saying he'd watched a light come down out of the sky and settle in the fields. Nobody believed him. At least, not until the dog began to bark. And out past the edge of the yard, in the dark, there was a glow, and inside the glow, something small, coming toward the house, with its hands raised over its head. Now, these were farm people, practical types, the sort who keep a gun by the door and know how to use it. So when this small thing appeared with its hands up, a shotgun and a .22 came down off the wall, and they fired. And here's the first strange thing. Whatever it was didn't fall. It flipped, went over backward, weightless, like a leaf caught in a draft, and it was gone into the dark, seemingly unhurt. It came back, of course, at the windows, on the eaves of the roof. One came down off the porch roof, and slid a long clawed hand into a man's hair. And every time the men fired, and they fired a great deal, 4 boxes of shells before the night was through, the same thing happened. The little silver bodies took the buckshot and rang with it, a hard, bright sound, like a fistful of gravel flung against a metal bucket. And then they simply righted themselves and drifted off, and then came back, again and again. 3 hours of it. 4. the house under siege and the besiegers no bigger than children, floating up out of the dark with their hands raised, taking round after round, and never once, not once, trying to get in. Near 11, the family had had enough. 12 of them folded into 2 cars and drove to the police in Hopkinsville. And the thing the officers remembered afterward was not that the story was mad. It was that these were not people prone to hysterics, and they were, every one, white with terror you cannot counterfeit. The lawmen went back with them, a dozen and more, city and state and military, trampling that farmyard with their lamps, and they found the shell casings, the holes shot through the screens, every proof that something had been fired at, all night, from every window of that house. And of the little silver men, nothing. No bodies, no prints, no blood, only a faint patch of glow on a fence line that soberer minds later put down to the luminous fungus you find on rotting wood. The police left, and near 3:30 in the morning, the little men came back and peered in at the windows and scratched at the walls until the sun came up and took them. You may know these ones by another name. The town that keeps them now throws a festival each summer and calls them goblins. Little green men, though not one soul in that farmhouse ever said green. They said silver. But names are like that. They settle on a thing from the outside, and they don't much care what the thing underneath them was. There was a meteor that night, a real one, bright enough to cross 3 states in fact, and a thing like that overhead would certainly prime anyone to see wonders in the dark. And then of course, there's always the option of birds. A great horned owl, a big one, territorial, awake in the small hours, with tufts on its head that could pass for pointed ears, wide yellow eyes that throw a torch beam straight back, pale underwings that flash silver, and of course talons for feet. Frighten a family bad enough in the dark, with guns in their hands, and an owl on the eve becomes a goblin on the porch. But in my opinion, it's a foolish explanation. It asks that you believe 12 people across 4 hours, emptying 4 boxes of shells, mistook the one owl for the one small silver man, over and over and over, and never landed a single pellet, and found not one feather come morning. The Hopkinsville Goblin isn't the only curiosity in this particular enclosure. As I said, this cage is reserved for the more intrusive and aggressive among the menagerie. Allow me to introduce the second. Come to the far end. Mind your step. And mind your stomach. If it's a delicate one, this next guest carries a smell that some people never quite shake loose. Up. Look up. Higher than that. 10 feet. Some even swear 12. And the first thing you'll fix on is the head, the hood rising to a point above the face, a great dark cowl in the exact shape of the spade on a playing card. The ace of spades, grown to the size of a man's whole upper half, and in the dark of it, a face, round and red, the red of a stoplight, and 2 eyes that don't so much look at you as shine on you, a greenish-orange glow that reaches. Below it falls away into folds, a pleated drape, dark green and metallic, hanging like a heavy skirt, so that you never see a leg, never see it take a step, because it doesn't step. 2 small clawed hands at the front, and then it comes at you, gliding, smooth and level, and hissing as it comes. The 12th of September, 1952. Braxton County, West Virginia. 2 boys saw a fireball come down on a hilltop farm and did what all boys do. Ran to fetch a grown-up, of course. And the grown-up was Kathleen May, their mother, who did a braver and more foolish thing than any of us would care to admit we might. She gathered the boys and a young National Guardsman named Jean Lemon, and the dog, and she climbed the hill toward it. The dog went ahead. The dog came back fast and low, and wanted no more of it. And at the top, in the beam of Lemon's flashlight, stood the thing I've just shown you. 10 feet of it, under an oak, hissing, its face burning red in the torchlight. They didn't stop to study it. They came down that hill a good deal faster than they'd gone up. But the hill came down with them, in a way, because the air up there was foul, a thick, metallic mist, a stink like scorched sulphur, and it got into them. That night and for days after, the whole party was sick, nausea, vomiting, their throats and eyes burning. Whatever they had stood near, it left a mark on the inside of them. The meteor is real again, documented that same night, streaking the sky. And the bird is back, a different one this time, a barn owl, up in the oak, its heart-shaped face gone pale in the flashlight, wings spread wide into a cloak, and a hiss in it when it's cornered. Set it high enough on the trunk, and fear will supply the missing 7 feet. And the sickness? Nerves, they say. Fright. The reek of the woods at night, or the fumes off their own cars. I know. Ridiculous. 7 people in total. 7. Sick for days. Fear, I'll admit, can do a great deal. I've never known it to scold 7 throats at once. The Hopkinsville Goblin and the Flatwoods Monster, both here in our second exhibit, here to represent the intruder we never capture. In a previous episode I shared the profound impact the movie The McPherson Tape had on me. That fear of faces, not just waiting in the dark, but deciding to walk forward, seemingly unshaken by our attempts to retain control of our home, our lives, the place where we're supposed to feel safest. And in these cases, 2 homes, a farmhouse and a hilltop, ordinary people, children among them, who looked up one night and found something staring back, and reached both times for the 2 things we always reach for, a gun and a door to bolt. And it made no difference at all. That's the heart of these 2 stories. Whatever they were, we never laid a hand on them, fired 4 boxes of shells and kept not a feather, brought a dozen armed men up the road and found bare dirt by lamplight. And then the faces, toward the window where the family is sitting, not rushing, not hiding, entirely unbothered by the fact that this is your home. This is what lives in this tent. The fever dream of ufology, the far edge of the map where the tidy accounts run out. No gentle light in the bedroom, no missing hour, no cold table, just a loud, waking, impossible thing at the glass, in front of everyone, refusing to go. And here, to their credit, is what these 2 stories have that the quiet cases never will. Witnesses. Not just one frightened soul alone in the dark, half doubting their own mind by breakfast. A whole household. A mother and her boys. 12 people at the windows of one small farm, all watching the same silver thing float up and out of the dark. They were played with, peered at, teased, toyed with, by something that took their gunfire like a party trick and kept right on coming. Subjects. That's what they were that night. Something came to their home to watch them. And now, here we are, watching them. Come on, let them sleep. There's more of the tent yet. Watch your step. Look along the ground. You see the cables, thick ones bundled, running out under the canvas at the seam. I've never been able to say what they're for. The tents here don't run on anything I can see, and they don't run back to a generator. I tried to follow them once, out under the wall into a field, but I just ended up going round in circles. Anyway, never mind, in here. You'll be happy to know, first, that there are no owls in this tent. These are what we call the machines. Here's the one I brought you to see. 5 feet, give or take. Stood? No, it doesn't stand. Look at the legs, or where the legs ought to be. They run together, fused into a single pedestal, a stump, so the whole thing balances like a chess piece and moves without walking. It floats, stiff and level. The skin is grey and deeply wrinkled, an elephant's hide, said the men who first saw it. No eyes. Look for them. You won't find them. Where the nose and the ears should sit, there are 3 small pointed growths instead, like carrots, like little horns. The mouth is a slit, lipless, and to this day it's never once opened. And at the ends of the arms, those, pincers, a crab's claw, a lobster's, on a thing the colour of ash. The 11th of October, 1973. 2 men fishing off an old shipyard on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. Charles Hickson, 42, a shipyard foreman, a man of standing in his town. And Calvin Parker, 19, who by every account never truly got clear of the next 20 minutes as long as he lived. A blue light, a craft, and these floating out of it, taking hold of the 2 of them and carrying them up and in. Now, here is why I keep this one at the centre of the tent. When it was over, and the men had staggered back and driven first to the airbase, which turned them away, and then to the county sheriff, the officers did a shrewd and cynical thing. They took Hickson and Parker, and they put the 2 of them alone in a room, and they shut the door, and they left the tape recorder running, hidden, where the men didn't know to find it. They expected later to hear 2 hoaxers left alone drop the act. Laughter, coordination to get the story straight. But these 2, alone, unwatched, with nobody left to perform for, did not laugh. On that tape the younger man unravels, says he can't take it, that he's about to go all to pieces. And the older man, no steadier inside than the boy, tries to settle him, and when the comforting runs dry, begins to pray. That's the recording. 2 frightened men in an empty room, believing themselves alone, praying. They gave Hickson a lie detector test, and he passed it, though I'll tell you plainly, as I always will, that the machine only measures what a man believes, not what's true, and the fellow running it that day was no expert. So set the polygraph down as half a thing. The tape is the whole one. Neither man took a penny of profit from it, and neither man, to his dying day, ever took a word of it back. Now, down here. This one came earlier. 1964, a bow hunter named Donald Shrum, alone, lost from his party in the mountains of California, up a tree in the dark to keep clear of whatever was coming, and what came were two figures in pale silver, and with them a thing that was no figure at all, a robot, his word, boxy, metal, jointed, two eyes that glowed a reddish orange like a car's lamps turned to face you, and a jaw, a hinged jaw, that dropped open and let out a white vapour that put him to sleep where he clung. He fought it the whole night, fired arrows at the machine, and swore they threw sparks off it, the way steel does off steel. Lit matches, set little fires, pitched them down, and every so often the jaw would open again, and the smoke would come, and he'd go under and wake, and it would still be there, patient. By dawn they were gone, and he was hanging by his own belt. And the Air Force, when they heard it, filed it under the single word they keep for cases they cannot close: unknown. And the last, the furthest from home in almost every sense. 1989, a city park in Voronezh in the Soviet Union, and the witnesses this time were children. They described giants, 10 feet, some said, small-headed, in silver coveralls and bronze boots, and one of them, they swore, had 3 eyes. And beside the giants, again, a robot, a machine that walked with them, and pointed a kind of tube at a boy, and the boy, they said, was there, and then was not. The thing that makes Voronezh remarkable isn't the giants, it's who repeated their story, because it was carried soberly at length by TASS, the official news agency of the Soviet state, in a country that did not, as a rule, run lighter content about visitors from the sky. The easy answer to this is glasnost, a Soviet policy of more open and wider dissemination of information, initiated by leader Gorbachev in '85. The country had just cracked its windows open, the press was drunk on the new air, and a good strange story sells in any language. That may be all it was, but the children were many and young, and the story held its shape, and not one of them, in all the years after, ever stood up to say they'd made it up. So here we have 3 machines, a sheriff, an air force, and the news agency of a superpower, each one made to stop, to take statement, and not quite know what to write down. So why a machine? Why these 3 automatons? Look at when these stories happened. Before the little grey men were on every book cover. Before the world had agreed on what an alien was even supposed to look like. A hunter in '64, 2 fishermen in '73, Soviet children in '89 behind a wall that kept most of our stories out. Not one of them was handed the picture. They had nothing to copy, and with nothing to copy, they didn't reach for an animal, nor an angel. They reached, every one, for a machine. The hinge, the pincer, the pedestal, the cold thing with the glowing eye that feels nothing and cannot be reasoned with. We keep these machines here for a very specific reason, and I'd be a poor guide if I didn't point that out. The grey embodies almost every word of these automatons. We think of the greys as flesh, skin, maybe even blood, a shape close enough to our own. But look at what we fixed on when we finally settled its face. The eyes huge and black, and behind them nothing you could call an expression. No warmth, no cruelty even, no room to negotiate. We gave it a body of flesh, and then we drained the flesh of everything that makes flesh a comfort. The grey is a machine too. We just gave it skin. Which sets me wondering, and I only wonder, standing here, whether the things in this cage weren't a kind of rough draft, A beta test, if you like. A culture's first attempts to give a form to something that arrives in experience already whole, but shapeless and wanting a face. There has always been a hole in us that wanted filling with a presence like this, an intelligence set above us without pity that we cannot argue our way out of. For most of our history, the dogma of religion filled it. And then, the sky changed and the rockets went up, and the whole went looking for a new face to wear in the space age. And these, the glowing eyes, the hinges, these were the early sketches. Perhaps the grey was the one the century finally settled on. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it here again. None of that unmakes the men who stood in front of these things. Not a word of it. After all, we can see into this cage ourselves, you and I. We see the beast and the bolts, and we'd be fools to miss that they are staring back, examining us every bit as closely as we stand here gawking at them. These were real knights, real people, but there's no sense pretending that they also weren't among the first of something, the progenitors, the ancestors of every abduction that came after. And you'll have noticed, people don't see robots much anymore. Not these, not the boxy, wiry ones stood cold before us. They've gone quiet, fallen out of the reports, which may be the strangest thing I can tell you about this whole tent, that a bestiary like ours, like ufology itself, carries extinct creatures, things that were seen and aren't seen now, drafts the culture used and set aside. And if they are real, if you could reach in past the bars and lay a hand on one, which I would advise you very strongly against, I do sometimes wonder whether the skin would be quite so cold and quite so rigid as these things would have you believe, whether the machine is the truth or only the shell. Perhaps one day we ought to try the same thing with our grey friends down the road. And so we keep the machines here, lit and humming and never quite shut away, a reminder that even this, even the catalogue of the impossible, has its fossils. And I'll tell you another thing. With that dim hum of electricity running through this enclosure, and those cables going out under the wall toward a field with nothing in it, of all of the exhibits, this is the one I don't care to close up on my own. Let's move on. This one has a tent to itself. You'll have noticed that walking up. The others share the same canvas. The invaders together, the machines racked side by side. But this one we set apart, and we keep the crowd back from the rope, and we don't raise our voices in here. You'll understand why in a moment. Come close, closer than you did at the others. It won't hurt you. It couldn't hurt anyone, this one, as long as you don't make contact with it, of course. There, in the corner, crouched against the low wall, just the way it was found all those years ago. Small, no taller than a child, and folded down smaller than that, knees up, thin arms drawn in between them. The skin is brown, not grey. Brown, dark and wet looking, oily, the way a thing glistens when it's been out in the rain too long, soft to the point that one of the people who saw it said it looked as though it might, at any moment, simply melt. There are veins under the surface, close to the skin, and the head is too big for the body. And set in it, 2 eyes, round and red, not reflecting red, lit red. 2 red balls, one of the girls said. And where a face should finish, it barely bothers. The suggestion of a nose, a small closed mouth, and, so the legend goes, 3 low protrusions rising from the crown of the skull, like the beginnings of horns. And the smell. Everyone who got near the place where it had been agreed on the smell. Ammonia, but with the hint of something rotten underneath it. That's the guest. Now let me tell you who found it, because they're the ones who matter here, and they've been laughed at for nearly 30 years, and I'm not going to add to it. The 20th of January 1996, late afternoon, in a town called Varginha, set in the hills of Brazil. 3 young women were walking across a vacant lot. Liliane Silva, who was 16, her sister, Valkyria, who was 14, and their friend Katia Javier, who was 22. And there, against a wall, in the wet grass, was the thing I've just shown you, crouched, alive, but weak and shivering, or seeming to. It moved its head. It may have even looked at them. They ran. Of course they ran. And when Liliana got home, she didn't say to her mother, "I've seen an animal," or "I've seen a man." She said, and I'll give it to you in her own words, "Moi eu vi o capeta." Mum, I've seen the devil. The mother went back with them, a little while later, and the creature was gone. But the place where it had been was not right. A wet patch pressed into the dirt, and the same reek hanging in the air, and a dog nearby that wanted nothing to do with the spot. This exhibit is the one we call the Brazilian Roswell, and everything I'm about to tell you now, I tell you the way it came to us. So the legend goes. The girls were not first that day. That very morning the fire brigade had been called out to the same neighbourhood, looking for a strange animal loose in the streets, and the firemen caught something and boxed it and handed it on. The army was already moving, a truck from the sergeant's school. Legend has it there was a creature taken to one hospital, and turned away and taken to another, and a wing of it closed off and put under armed guard. There were 2 of them, maybe more. Fun though legends can be, this is the part that takes the humour out of the room, the part that makes you respect the rope you're leaning on right now. One of the men who handled it, a young military policeman named Marco Cerese, fell ill not long after, and within weeks, he was dead. The records report an infection, pneumonia. They do not say from what. The legend says otherwise, and I'll leave the legend and the record standing side by side. We don't need to marry them ourselves. That's the architecture, a whole secret machinery of capture and cover-up. And the earthly explanation? There was a man in that town, unwell in his mind and his body, who had a way of crouching in alleys, whose head was apparently larger than most, and who, on that wet afternoon, had been subject to the same storm. And the suggestion put gently, by people who were not unkind, is that 3 frightened young women, stumbling upon a soaked and huddled and unfortunate man in the dusk, instead saw a devil where there was only a sick and sheltering human being. Perhaps you've noticed the through line with all of tonight's creatures. The conventional conclusions drawn about the experiences reach for human irrationality, but they reach extremely hard for it. Ours misidentifying owls, a homeless man for a 3-horned demon with red eyes. It's only due to pure lack of physical evidence that our witnesses are characterized with such unrealistic responses to what are very terrestrial things. People make mistakes, yes. People make things up, yes. But I might add, these girls have never taken a coin. In fact, their mother alleges she had even refused payment to say that they'd been mistaken. But the skeptical mind necessitates our belief that these people are simply unbelievably foolish, that none of them took the 5 seconds of time it's required to identify a member of their own species, and that the raised arms of a persistent, intelligent and coordinated intruder were in fact just the flapping of a giant owl's wings, for hours without end. I don't believe this requires more. We can see these creatures here before us. We can see this oily-skinned being, and we can visit the grave of a man that helped it to the hospital. And we can continue. This was daylight, 3 sets of eyes, and a creature that, whatever it was, did not match the picture. By 1996, the whole world knew what an alien was supposed to look like. Smooth and grey, and almond eyes. Every child could have drawn you one. And these 3 did not describe that. They described something browner and stranger, and somewhat older. Something that broke the mould the culture had already permitted them to describe. Which is a curious thing for 3 girls to invent. That they'd reach past the alien everyone already knew, and come back with one nobody did. Varginha built a water tower shaped like a saucer, and a museum, and a little red-eyed statue on the spot, and it sells the creature on t-shirts now. It made the thing they saw into a mascot, but it never quite got round to believing the 3 girls who saw it. That happens more than you'd think in this line of work. Now let's let her be. Come on. There aren't many cages left. You can feel it. The lights thin out down this end of the tent. The ground goes soft under the sawdust, and the last 2 wagons sit a little apart from the others, back in the far corner, the way you'd set aside things you weren't quite sure what to do with. Wait. Look over there for a moment, past the last wagon, where the canvas meets the ground. There's someone crouched down. One of the hands, I suppose, working late, low to the floor, back to us, doing something with their fingers to the bottom of the tent wall, fiddling with a peg or a wire, or I can't quite... No, nothing. Just the canvas, breathing in the wind, and the guy ropes ticking. Best not wander off now. Stay close, through here. These 2 are the purest things in the whole show. They've survived this long relatively untouched, unembellished, boring, but in the best way possible. They were here, and then they were not, and the entire life of each one, every moment it was ever witnessed to exist, you could measure on a clock. Here's the first. Massachusetts, a town called Dover, the spring of 1977. Small, the size of a child again, or a big dog set upright, and thin, terribly thin, all spindle and joint. A large head, and long and swollen. The boy who saw it first reached for the only word that fit, and the word was watermelon. No hair anywhere, skin the soft peach of a comic strip drawing, of flesh with the blood all drained out. No nose that anyone could identify, no mouth, and 2 eyes round and lit, and orange, set in the great pale melon of a skull. It was gripping the top of a low stone wall when he saw it, and what gripped the stones were not quite hands, long, thin, feeling at the rock like tendrils, like the fingers of something that had evolved without the need for bones. And here is the whole of its life. On the night of the 21st of April, a 17-year-old saw it on a wall on Farm Street. 2 hours later, past midnight, a boy of 15 met the same thing a mile off, on another road, and stood and watched it before it slipped into the trees. And the next night, a third teenager saw it from a passing car. Different children, different roads, the same melon-headed thing. 3 sightings, about 25 hours, start to finish. And then never again. Not the next week, not the next year, not once in all the decades since. The local police chief said the children were good and reliable and had no reason to lie, and they never once took it back or saw the thing a second time. 25 hours of existence, and then the wall was just a wall again. Perhaps a stray foal out of season, a moose in a state that almost had none, a sick fox which the boy swore blind it was not, and he'd seen sick foxes. An owl with its wings half spread, again. Each answer fits a corner of it, but none of them fit the whole. The melon head, the tendril fingers, and the lit orange eyes, all at once. Take your pick, if you like. And we travelled all the way to my home country to capture this last creature. Ilkley Moor in Yorkshire, England. The 1st of December 1987. And the man who saw it was not a teenager on a dark road. He was a former policeman, out early across the moor in the fog, with a compass in one hand and, as luck or fate would have it, a camera in the other. Small again, 4 feet perhaps. This time it was green, a dark, leathery green, with a big bald head and long thin arms. It saw him. It raised an arm, lifted a hand toward him, waving him off, or beckoning, or warning, no one can say which. And in the half-second it did that, the old policeman lifted his camera and pressed the shutter. And that's why this wagon is the strangest of all, because this policeman got it. One photograph, grainy and grey and poor, but there on the moor, a small dark figure with its arm coming up. I'd tell you to look it up if it wasn't stood right in front of you. He didn't sell it, he gave it to investigators and asked to keep his name out of it. He said his compass had reversed itself that morning, north gone to south. He said 2 hours had gone missing that he couldn't account for. A photographic lab looked at the picture and found no trick in it that they could name, though they were honest that it was too poor to prove anything either way. And a good deal else got added to the story later, under hypnosis, months after. A craft, a table, the usual dark furniture. But that part we'll leave in the dark where it belongs. The skeptic's answer is simple and fair. It's a blurry picture. And a blurry picture can be a man or a child or a cardboard cutout stood in the heather. And the compass and the missing hours rest on the word of one man. But he was a policeman who took no money and hid his name and told the one story to his death. And of everything in this whole menagerie, the moth, the goblins, the machines, the thing in the rain at Varginha, this is the only exhibit that lets you take a picture with it. One photograph, one raised hand, and then the moor was empty, and stayed empty. Let's remind ourselves, before we go, of what a bestiary is for. A bestiary doesn't concern itself with the validity of the creatures it describes. That was never the point. The point is to teach, to light the way toward a truth. And the species we've examined tonight each came with their own story, their own description, and their own lesson to be learned. I can't tell you which of the exhibits we've walked past can be touched with our own hands. I can't tell you how long it'll be before another chance to expand the show comes along. Those days, for the time being at least, appear to be over, and I don't exactly know why. The phenomenon is forever changing. But as we stand here in this quiet tent, things can feel static, certain, timeless and immovable. The Nordics, the mantids, the reptilians, the greys, the staples of ufology, the ones we told ourselves were all we'd ever need to understand the whole of it. But I have a suspicion we're only scratching the surface. This menagerie is the proof of it, because these creatures were once all the rage, and now, look, here they are, reduced to a largely unprofitable little sideshow at the edge of a motel parking lot. Have you seen anybody else in here since we arrived? Who's running this show? Who's behind the curtain? I want you to think about that. Is this even the show we think it is? We've spent the whole night looking at things through these bars, and yet, since time began, has humanity itself not been the species confined to a planet we do not control, can barely leave, and which, as the years go on, we seem to understand less and less, rather than more? This circus, this tent, this cage, this exhibit, it's all an illusion of control we have never once actually had. We've been living in a hall of mirrors. Whatever the phenomenon is, we know it does at least one thing. It watches. It doesn't answer our questions, it doesn't negotiate. It doesn't trouble itself with the petty little differences we impose on one another. We are the ones living in the menagerie, and we are the sole exhibit, an odd curiosity on a small planet in the middle of nowhere. And as the tent and the wagons and the cages and all the species melt away, we're left at last to confront what was working behind the curtain the whole time. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know why it does what it does. But we do know this much. It intends to preserve the illusion. Why? To keep us here, under control, observable. Come and see the rarest thing in the whole menagerie, seen once, never again, nowhere else in the universe. Humans. Enjoy your stay. Sleep well.